Straight out of Stratford, slinging takes like Stafford, talking all the big games, have a beer right after. When it comes to the facts and the stats we provide, better know that our names will be up in the raps. Straight out of Stratford, slinging takes like Stafford, talking all the big games, have a beer right after. When it comes to the facts and the stats we provide, better know that our names will be up in the rafters.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Straight Outta Stratford podcast. Episode 1 is officially going to be out. We're going to be talking all the hot takes with sports, the signings, the trades, the scores. I am Zach, one of the hosts, along with my co-host, Julian.
What's going on, guys?
And we got a lot to cover today, a lot to talk about as the sports world is starting to get to a little bit more of a lull moment in the year with a lot of things coming to an end. So we will actually start out with the NHL Finals recap. So a couple nights ago, we saw the Florida Panthers go back-to-back and win their second consecutive Stanley Cup against the Edmonton Oilers, who they had previously defeated in the year prior. And it was quite the series that we saw. A lot of people had high expectations for Edmonton. A lot of people had high expectations for Florida, even though Florida looked like they were in a little bit of trouble at one point. But it was a very good series. Julian, you got anything to comment on the NHL?
I saw something the other day. I don't know if this is a fact, but some people think that in order for McDavid to be considered great, he needs to win a Stanley Cup.
Well, that can be very true. I think that he definitely already has the statistics to prove that he is a top player in this league's history. The only problem is if he wants to be considered as the next legend or the next great one behind Wayne Gretzky or above Wayne Gretzky, you're going to have to win at least one Stanley Cup, at least.
Can't you argue that the next one below Gretzky would be Ovechkin?
Well, you could. I see a lot of people arguing Sidney Crosby is one of them as well, too. Obviously, you still have the greats like Mario Lemieux and Bobby Orr that are in that conversation. Crosby, I feel like, definitely has a little bit of an ante up just because of the fact that he's won 3 Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh. He's got the stats to prove it. He's got a couple gold medals with the Canadian Olympic team. So when it comes to all of the championships and accolades, Crosby is technically considered a little bit higher than Ovechkin. If Ovechkin does win another Stanley Cup before he retires, that could change. We're not really sure because obviously he's still got at least 1 year left on his contract. I think he said next year will be his last year, but they're not fully confirmed on that. So that's something to be determined. But
isn't he also chasing 1,000 goals?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he finished somewhere with the high 890s because I know the record was 894. And I know he broke it. So I think he's at like 897 or 898, which is insane.
I remember I saw something that a reporter said, oh, so next year going to be your last. He goes, why not chase 1,000?
Well, yeah, that's true, but it may take a couple more seasons. Obviously, it would take more than one unless he scored 80 in a season, which that's like unheard of. Nobody's done that since Gretzky in years prior, which I wouldn't even be surprised to see him crack 100, I think, in one season, Gretzky, at one point. I know he had almost, I think it was 260-something points in a single season. It was nuts. But he's the only person to, I believe, crack 200 multiple times in his career.
Ovechkin, we need to score 103.
Yeah, and 103 is a very hefty number, especially when it comes to goals scored. He would have to score like 50-something in 2 seasons to do it, which at his age, it's already impressive enough that he's at 897 goals, but I mean, it's incredible. If he does, however, crack 1,000, he is definitely in the conversation to be one of the greatest. He's already the greatest goal scorer, but greatest overall player. That's a very, very high feat to try and beat Gretzky. I mean, that's insane. But we will get back to the Florida Panthers again. Sam Bennett won the Conn Smythe Trophy with 22 points in 23 games played, also tied a record for 15 goals in a single postseason.
That's crazy.
It's not a surprise that he won the Conn Smythe. A lot of people argued that it should be Marchand. Some said it was Reinhart after his 4-goal night in the cup-clinching game. I think for me, I watched the entire series from start to finish every single night, and it was fair to say that Sam Bennett definitely deserved that trophy. I mean, 15 goals in 23 games during the playoffs. He was the biggest contributor by far, and it showed.
You want to know what I think is crazy? I believe I could be wrong because I'm not really big on hockey. Mm-hmm. I watch here and there. But the last 6 years, there's been a team in the Stanley Cup that was from Florida.
Well,
Am I wrong?
You are correct. It was Tampa for, I believe, 3 years in a row, and then it was Florida 3 years in a row. But the big thing with those Florida teams that a lot of people make the excuse, oh, well, it's the cap space and the fact that Florida's taxes are lower, so they don't have to worry about paying as much for players. Now, the big thing that I say all the time, especially when it comes to Florida, is it's not just the players and the monetary value. It's the coaching staff, it's the development, it's the scouting. And all of those teams between Paul Maurice and I believe it's John Cooper, who's the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, if you look at those guys, they know how to develop their players. They know how to create a very tough system that's, hard to beat for a lot of teams, including for teams that are star-studded like Edmonton, where you have two of the best players in the league right now in McDavid and Draisaitl, and they were fairly quiet in that Stanley Cup final. I mean, Draisaitl had a couple game-winning goals here and there, but McDavid did not look like his normal self. He was getting beat up a little bit, thrown around, because that's Florida's game, is just that fast, physical, gritty presence on the ice. And there's a big reason why they've won back-to-back cups is they kept a lot of the same players, they used the same system, and it shows that it works extremely well. Their defense is suffocating, and the big thing I'm actually going to bring up, which a lot of people did not realize, was in this Stanley Cup final, you had two players, the stars, I'd say, for the Florida Panthers, other than Reinhart and Marchand, but Alexander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk, both playing through two very gruesome injuries that nobody really talked about. I saw the picture of Barkov's injury, and then we heard in the post-game conference with Tkachuk talking about his injuries. Barkov split his hand open, and they had it stitched, and the stitches fell out, and so he went and had it glued and continued to play throughout the Stanley Cup, which was nuts. That's crazy. But the other one is Tkachuk played with a torn adductor in his groin and a hernia on the same side throughout the Stanley Cup final. So the fact that those guys played to the top level that they've played the entire year with gruesome injuries like that goes to show the heart and passion that hockey players have when they're out on the ice, especially when it comes to the Stanley Cup final. In my opinion, as a hockey player, I know it's going to sound a little biased, but there's nothing like it. Those dudes put on for their city, they put on for their team, and the fact that they're playing through those injuries goes to show the commitment level, especially when they're not making nearly as much as NBA players, MLB players, or NFL players.
Yeah.
It's insane. But now, enough hockey talk, since, that's usually my big thing, but we'll go over to the NBA Finals. Last night, we saw Indiana keep the series alive and keep their finals hopes alive, winning in Game 6 by a final score of 108-91. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well, but I will say, I think the big thing in this series that has allowed Indiana throughout all rounds, including this one, to stay relevant and stay alive is their production off the bench. That's one of the biggest things that they've done the whole year.
I will agree with that. Me and Zach are both Knicks fans, so
sadly, yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. In that series, you were able to tell that not only were the Knicks outcoached, they were outplayed.
Absolutely. No question.
They were running the same lineup, the same 7 players, and you have Indiana putting their 10th man in off the bench, and he's putting up at least 8 points and 3 boards.
I'd even say more than that, because I pulled it up last night.
Yeah, was it 10?
Especially, I believe. Okay, so here it is. It's Obi Toppin, former Knick, which, again, this is the part that gets my gears going a little bit, is Obi Toppin scored 20 points off the bench, and TJ McConnell added another 12. I pulled up all the stats from other nights when I was doing my prior research, since we thought, the podcast would be starting last week, but obviously we had some complication. But yeah. I pulled up all of the stats from games, I believe, 1 to 5. And if you look at all the games that Indiana wins, they get extreme production off the bench from different players, not just the same player every night.
Adding to that, right? Even, I know there were 2 or 3 games where Halliburton was out because of his leg or hamstring or whatever. You had Andrew Nembhard come in the starting lineup. And I think he dropped 24 one night and maybe 30 the other. Having that production off the bench, especially when you're supposedly...
I'd actually love to pull this up to see if I could find what the stats were. I'm telling you, it was disgusting. I could not believe it.
Yeah, I was watching the game last night, and the announcer, one of them said, I don't remember who said it, but he said that Andrew Nembhard put up 24 one game, and I believe it was like 30. In the
Okay,
other
here we
game.
go.
Yeah.
See, here's my point. So from game 1, they won by 1 point. Obviously, Halliburton hit that shot at the buzzer to win the game. But if you look at some of the stats here, Obi Toppin scored 17 that one night. That's another example. Again, Halliburton only had 14.
Are we talking about the finals?
Well, yeah, of course. We're
Yeah.
talking about the finals between, the Thunder and
Well, no,
the
because
Pacers,
you said game 1 won by 1 point. I
Yeah.
didn't know if you were talking about the Eastern Conference.
Oh,
final.
no.
Yeah.
But no, from the game 1 of the final, you had the Pacers winning 111-110 over the Thunder.
Yeah.
But the big thing was Obi Toppin that one night score 17 points. Halliburton only had 14, which obviously is still fairly good. Nembhard 14, Turner had 15, Neesmith had 10, Siakam had 19. And then you don't really get much production other than McConnell with 9, Mathurin had 5, Shepherd had 3. So you're still getting some production out of them. It's nothing crazy. But, I mean, you have different guys every night that are coming in and contributing in different ways. Like game 2, they didn't win, but you get 14 out of Mathurin, 11 out of McConnell. Again, that was a game that Obi Toppin really didn't do as well. I think he only had 3 points, which he had 3 on 5 attempts, which is still, off the bench, you're not expected to do that every single night. But, I mean, the role play and everything that you see from them in these games, you have guys coming off the bench, whether it's Mathurin, whether it's McConnell, it could be Obi Toppin, it could be Bryant. You're getting different looks from all these guys. And if one of them doesn't step up one night, another one steps up the other night. And that's the reason why that I think that they stayed alive in this series as long as they have.
I just want to correct myself real quick. I don't need anybody coming at me. First episode.
Don't need that.
It wasn't points that Nembhard had. I guess they were talking about minutes. It was late. I was tired. I worked 10 hours yesterday, so I was probably
I
most
think
likely.
we could deal with that. Yeah, that makes sense. But that's just revolving around my point again. Is the reason why I think the Knicks were eliminated by the Pacers is that same reason, which is contributing to why they're keeping up with the easily right now, I think, would be the favorite to win the NBA Finals. Before the finals even started, I was saying that OKC looked like that team that was going to be almost impossible to beat. And here we are, with 1 game left in the NBA season, and we're sitting at 3-3. And it's basically anybody's ball game. Obviously, the Thunder will have a little bit of a leg up playing at home, but you never know with this Indiana team. They've been firing on all cylinders. You got guys stepping up when they need to. Even in Halliburton's game, where I think he was limited to 0 in the first half, they have games where you just don't know where you're going to get the point production from. It could be from anybody, and that's the big problem that's kind of hindered OKC a little bit.
Because that's when you think about it, right? You think of OKC, you think of the big 3, you think of Shea, Chet, and Jalen Williams, right?
Correct. Yep.
When you think of the Pacers, you don't really have a big 3. You kind of have like a big 2 in Halliburton and Siakam. But when teams are like, oh, we're going to guard Halliburton, we're going to double Halliburton, we're going to double Siakam, we're going to limit them to nothing. Like you said, you have Obi Toppin putting up 20 points. It's literally,
absolutely,
it literally is an example of how important good depth is on the bench.
Of course.
I feel like most teams don't. I'm not saying most teams have bad bench depth, but I'm saying more teams could improve on it.
Absolutely. Well, that's again, going back to the Eastern Conference final, if you look at that game 6 where Indiana knocked the Knicks out, it was obvious that Indiana's game plan was very, very simple.
Shut
2
Brunson
words.
down.
Stop Brunson. If you keep Brunson out of the game, you are going to win. And Brunson scored, I think, the least amount of points he did the whole series that game. Ended up going, obviously, directly to Indiana's favor. Indiana pulled away. And that's the one thing is the Knicks didn't have that off-the-bench production. We talked about it with either Deuce or Mitch Robinson coming off. They didn't really use Shamet. They didn't use Kolak. They didn't use a lot of guys that they have on their bench. And it showed in that one game.
What they did in that game 6 was they didn't allow Brunson to drive to the lane.
Yep.
If Brunson drives to the lane, he hits a post fade around the free throw line, and it's money every single time.
Yep, and he was on fire when it came to those post shots, too. I mean, he looked unguardable at some points during that series. Well, obviously, throughout the season, there's a reason why he was the clutch player of the year. It's not a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, well, even if you look at the Detroit series, clutch player of the year.
Making the big shots when he needs to make the big shots.
But what I'm saying is Brunson scores a lot, but what he does is he plays He's a guard, but he plays like a big man. He's not afraid to go get that contact. He'll drive to the rim.
That's true.
I'm a Knicks fan. Don't come at me. Brunson is a free throw merchant. He likes the line.
No, we can argue about that too. I think SGA could be a little bit more.
I'm not saying
SGA
isn't a free throw merchant because he's another one, but those are two people that play the guard position that know how to work the lanes, and then know how to get to the rim and know how to get buckets. And when you have players like that, you're going to go far in the playoffs.
Well, and the other big thing is, too, a lot of people will say it like it's a negative thing. It's really not a negative thing to be a free throw merchant at all, because it means that you're playing your game plan as well as almost any other guard in the league. If you can drive and get, free throws. I mean, another one that we've talked about whose name is massive is James Harden. James Harden used to shoot so many free throws per game because he was not afraid to take the ball to the rack and use his big frame that he has to try and drive to the hoop. He's causing other teams to foul him. They get into foul trouble. And if you give him a free shot from the free throw line, what's he going to do? Say, oh, no, I don't want those points. You're going to take those points any day of the week.
We're not going to overlook the fact that this isn't the first OKC guard that used to love to run to the rim.
Yep. No.
There's a great.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook was a phenomenal player in OKC, and then when he went to Houston, he was still good. And then after that, Russell Westbrook.
Well, I think age definitely was a factor. He just wasn't as nimble as he once was. But I mean, he's still, I think, a Hall of Famer in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. Russell Westbrook deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But what I'm saying is, most people who don't really watch basketball think, oh, you're a guard. Can you shoot a three? Every single chance you get to shoot a three, you have to shoot it. But what you don't understand is that a game isn't won on threes. A game is won on great coaching and plays.
And effective game planning. I see what you're going for.
You could
Absolutely.
you could have a wide open three, but you could see the paint wide open, and you could think, oh, this team gave us the pick and roll all night long. Let's just keep running with the pick and roll until they stop it.
Of course.
And then when they do stop the pick and roll, you're going to have that wide open three, and then you're going to get the look.
Well, you see teams do that a lot, especially like Golden State when they went on their dynasty run. That was one of the only teams I think that could really say that their game plan was shoot threes. Steph Curry didn't really have to drive to the rack that much. Klay Thompson didn't really have to. He didn't even have to dribble. I mean, those guys, you leave them in any capacity somewhat open. Doesn't even have to be open, just somewhat open. Well, they are going to torch you.
Didn't Klay Thompson, doesn't he have the record for most threes in a quarter?
No, I think he's got the record for most points in a quarter, I believe.
No, I think it's threes.
To be honest, if it's going to be points, it probably is threes.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, go for it. But I'm almost positive that it is. But we're also going to transition a little bit, too, while you look that up. We were talking about OKC. Now, the big thing that I said about OKC that I personally believe is I think that you have a possible OKC dynasty brewing right now. Their average age of their team in the finals right now is 24 years old. Oldest player on their team is Alex Caruso. I believe he's 33. Don't check me on that. I could be wrong. Alex Caruso, I'm sorry if you're younger than that. It doesn't help, but I believe he is their oldest player on their team. But I mean, if you look at other guys like Chet and Jalen Williams, they're still on rookie contracts.
Caruso is 31.
He's 31. I knew he was in his 30s. We're fairly close.
Well, I have the mic real quick. I am going to say Klay Thompson had a record-breaking 37 points in a quarter. With a record-breaking 9 3-pointers.
See, so we were both right.
Yes.
But the thing is, too, I believe I knew that record because I believe it was George Gervin that did hold that record for the longest time, and Klay Thompson broke it. I remember watching that game and watching Klay Thompson absolutely torch
Sacramento.
It was Sacramento. That's correct. And I remember watching that game, and I'm sitting there going, man, did they not realize you got to cover Klay Thompson? The guy was torching him the whole night.
See, what Sacramento's game plan was, right? Probably what they were thinking, if we cover Klay Thompson, right, you're going to have the same thing on the other side of the court.
With the best three-point shooter ever. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's kind of the method of pick your poison. You guard Steph, you leave Klay open, and you're going to get torched, vice versa.
That team was just so well put together. And the addition of Kevin Durant to that team
was nuts. That team was absolutely insane to watch. I mean, it makes me hurt knowing that
That's when it was the Warriors and Cavs in the finals for like 4 straight years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was, and it was consistently LeBron and KD or LeBron and Steph. Well, LeBron is basically Mr. Finals anyway. I mean, I don't remember his record exactly off the top of my head, but I think it was like 10 straight finals, I believe, or something like that.
Probably something like that.
It was something so ridiculous, but I mean, to the fact that they were able to beat him, they could have beat him with or without KD. KD was just another piece added that made them that much more unstoppable.
Well, didn't LeBron come back down 3-1 on that team?
He did come back from 3-1 on that team.
All right, I think we're getting a little off topic.
We're getting a little bit off topic. But anyway, we'll go back to what I was saying before with you got OKC, average age of the team, 24 years old. Alex Caruso is the oldest player on the team. Then you, like I said, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams are both on rookie deals. Now they're starting to think a little bit because they're $24 million over the cap space. So you're going to have to make some moves. However, they could still be somewhat flexible and keep their core 3 pieces that they have while acquiring some new talent. We're not sure what route they're going to go, but I mean, I pulled up everything. I mean, I have, let's see, they're $24 million over. Right?
I believe, but I believe in that sense, right? They are going to most likely have to let Hartenstein they're either going to have to trade him or they're just going to have to eat his money. And
well, that's the big thing I was going to say is I have Hartenstein just signed a 3-year, $87 million contract in July of 2024. That is a piece that's going to be harder to move because he's got more years on his contract. However, Lou Dort is in year 3 of 5 of an $87.5 million contract. That one's probably a little bit easier to move because if you do trade him, he does only have 2 years left on his contract. I don't know how much money guaranteed left he's probably got.
Though.
Well, no, Hartenstein just signed his deal last year. So he's still got another, I think, he's got 3 years left. Oh, no, maybe he has 2 years. So it's probably close, but
it's because if he signed a 3-year deal last July, that's when the season ended. This would have been his first year. So.
Well, yeah, that was... Yeah, so this was his first year. So he's still got 2 years left.
He's got 2 years left on his deal.
But then they also have Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins are also guys that are under contract. I don't know the exact details of their contract, but those are guys that they probably have to consider moving, as well as some other depth pieces that they do have. I doubt Caruso is one of the guys that's moved. I could be wrong. I don't know what his contract situation is either. They could move off of him as well. I think, like we've said, the big 3 between SGA, Chet, and Williams are the guys that they are going to continue to try and build around, especially since
let's be honest here. Sam Pressly is a genius.
Well, yeah, everyone was judging him all those years when they didn't have those draft picks. They gave everybody away and just loaded up on draft picks in the future, and everyone's going, oh, this team is going to be so uncompetitive, blah, 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 and here we are. And they're in the NBA Finals. They're 1 game away from winning the whole thing.
Okay, now that we're on the topic of basketball, there is, I think there's one specific topic that we have to quickly talk about.
Okay.
That is utterly insane to think about.
I'm curious to hear
the Lakers being sold for $10 billion.
Yes, and I believe it was the owner of the Dodgers.
It was the owner of the Dodgers who purchased the Lakers.
So if it's anything like the Dodgers, they are not going to be afraid to spend money. That is one thing for sure. I know that they have a cap, whereas baseball doesn't, but still, they're not going to be afraid to spend some money and acquire some superstars.
Yeah.
Well, they already have a bunch of superstars anyway.
And Luka and LeBron
for now. Well, even Austin Reeves said it the other night. I believe he said that LeBron could probably play till he's 45. I don't know how accurate that is. If he continues to play at the pace, now he's in great shape. It's possible.
LeBron's in great shape, but basketball is more than just a physical toughness game. It's like a mental game as well.
True, but he's also got a pretty good mental space as well. I mean, he dedicates a lot of his time to making sure that he's in not only the right physique, but as well as the right mental state to play the game. And he's one of the smartest players I've seen ever since I was a kid. Obviously, I missed the Michael Jordan years because I was a little too young, but seeing what he's done over these past 20 years, I mean, the guy is one of the best basketball players of all time. Anyone who argues, you could have the argument about Jordan and LeBron and Kobe, whatever. LeBron has already cemented himself as one of the top 3 basketball players of all time.
Top 3, yes.
I'm not going to say 1 or 2.
I'm not arguing 1 or 2, but when you said LeBron, Jordan, or Kobe, I might start a little controversy.
With Steph?
Yeah, with Steph.
I've seen a lot of people make
yeah.
that argument as well too. So it's definitely up there. Like I said, all of those topics can be discussed at one point. Obviously, we're going to have plenty of episodes where we can dive deeper into that kind of stuff. I think what we should do is we should probably transition over to some other big news in a different sport. Now we're going to be talking a little bit about Major League Baseball, since that's the sport right now that is in the heart of their season. And the biggest news that we saw from them,
it was a shock. It happened on Father's Day, I believe, around 6 o'clock.
Yep, it was around that time, I believe, and it was Rafi Devers
being traded from Boston.
Being traded to San Francisco. And I mean, I kind of saw this coming a little bit. Now I will go in depth a tiny bit just because we have all the details of the actual trade. So
let me just say something before you go into depth
I don't want to
about the trade.
Don't want to hate.
Like, I feel like a lot of people are going to see because the other day Devers said, oh, if you want me to play first base here, I will play first base here. A lot of people will say, well, why didn't he just agree to do that when Boston asked him to do that? What most people don't understand is that Boston went out in the offseason during spring training, and they signed Bregman new 3 years, $120 million. So it's $40 million a year. They didn't ask Devers if he would move to first before they signed Bregman. They didn't even tell Devers that they were going to sign Bregman.
That's true, but then
they just signed Bregman and then told Devers, you're playing first base.
Well, that's true, but here's another thing that I will say. So first, we'll get the details out. So the trade was, you are right, it was Bregman for 3 years, $120 million. But they ended up trading for Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, and prospects James Tibbs III and Jose Bello. So they gave up a decent amount of stuff. I know Kyle Harrison was a big name, and I know Jordan Hicks is a very hard-throwing right-handed pitcher. So they made two decent moves that will help them in the future. But the big thing is, I think it was a little bit more of a stab in the back to Rafi Devers as well, only because he was complaining, saying, I want to be the everyday third baseman. Before the Bregman signing even happened, he wanted to be that third baseman.
Yes.
They proceed to trade him to San Francisco, who currently has
Matt Chapman,
who's a Gold Glove winning third baseman on their roster. So I feel like it was like, okay, if you do not want to play first base for us and you want to be our third baseman, how about we trade you to a situation where now you can decide if you want to sit the bench behind Chapman or if you're going to bite the bullet and say, okay, well, I'll play first base or DH for you, no problem.
Well, it's not only that, because I feel like it's just a stab in the back to Devers in the beginning by him saying, I want to be the everyday third baseman. And then they go sign Bregman. Don't get me wrong, Bregman is way better
in the field
than Devers is. But if you look at Devers' bat, right, it was made for Fenway.
It was.
You have Devers, who statistically has great stats against the AL East.
I actually have his career stats pulled up here, which we'll get to at some point.
But what I was going to say was that, who is the second pitcher you named? Kyle Harrison, right?
Yeah, it was or Jordan Hicks. Sorry, I said Kyle Harrison
Jordan
first.
Hicks was the big pitcher. But what I don't understand is they trade Devers, right? Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, two prospects. They immediately send Kyle Harrison down to AAA.
Well, he did need a little bit more development in the starts that he made for San Francisco or in the relief appearances. He didn't really look that great, and he's still fairly young.
I'm not saying he's not looking that great. I'm just saying that, like, when you think of Devers, you think of superstar.
Yeah, yes, you do.
Like, they even did this with, I'm going to bring up a trade that's not going to sit well with Boston fans.
Sorry, Boston fans.
Mookie Betts.
Yep.
They gave him the Boston. They gave him the Dodgers in 2020, and I believe the main trade piece around Mookie Betts was Alex Verdugo. It was Alex. It was. They gave up Mookie Betts and David Price, which I don't think David Price ever played for the Dodgers because it was COVID year.
Well, yeah, no, it may have been that, but it also could have been injuries as well too. I know he struggled with injuries a little bit towards the end.
Well, yeah, no, I think Price sat out COVID year and then just retired after that.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all either.
But I think it
continue.
was Mookie Betts. I'm gonna pull up the whole trade so I don't get it wrong. It was Mookie Betts, David Price for Verdugo, Jeter Downs, Connor, Wong. It was Mookie Betts for Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong. That's literally all it was.
Well, the big thing is, too, those guys, some of them, I believe Jeter Downs, I don't know where he is now.
The last I heard from Downs was last year when he was in the Yankees minor league system.
Yeah, which it's strange how all those pieces came out to play. But now the thing that I looked at, which they've moved off of 3 superstars in the past couple of years from that 2018 World Series team.
Another thing they fumbled was Bogarts.
That's what I was just about to say.
They let him walk in free agency when at the trade deadline you could have at least gotten something from him. But
that's my thing is if you look, those were their 3 main pieces on that World Series team. I'm not going to include pitching because pitching was a little bit different, but if you focus on their 3 main bats, they had Bogarts, they had Betts, and they had Devers. Now all 3 of those guys are on other teams. Bogarts obviously had a little bit of a struggle. I've seen a lot of people on social media saying somebody's got to move this guy. They got to trade him. He's getting paid way too much money. I've seen a lot of people complaining about him. Then you have Mookie Betts, who obviously went to the Dodgers. He's another one that absolute superstar, one of the best players in the league right now, on one of the best teams in the league. And then you move Devers. And Devers during his career, I'm looking at his stats. So he won in 2018 with the Red Sox for the World Series. In his 8 full seasons in the MLB, he has 215 career home runs, 697 RBIs, and a career batting average of 279. So you're looking at a guy that's
really good,
insanely good stats, and you move him to a team that's obviously on the opposite side of the country. They're in a completely different division. They're in the NL versus the AL. It's completely different. And now the Red Sox are sitting there. They're in 4th place in the AL East, trailing Tampa and Toronto and the Yankees in 1st place with only Baltimore behind them. And they're already talking about moving Jalen Duran. I've heard them saying, Jaren Duran, whatever.
I don't know what I just realized is I believe the Red Sox, all 3 of those players named Devers, Bogarts, Betts are all in the same division now.
They are. Dodgers, Giants, and Padres. Yep, they are all in the NL West. So
I think that's
hilarious. Even crazier, but I think there's a reason why they may do that is to say, okay, well, if you're not going to be on our team, we're going to send you all the way over there so we don't have to play against you all too often, and we don't have to see you all too often. So I think that may be a little bit of a thing.
The only thing I'm going to say is the Mookie Betts trade did make sense because he was going to be a free agent.
And they had to get something out of him.
But going to that, another mistake that was made in the MLB was it happened 2 years ago, I believe, when Ohtani was with the Angels, his last year with the Angels. I don't know what's going through GM's mind, but I am pretty sure there were a lot of teams that would have given up a lot to get half a season of Ohtani.
A lot's of understatement. There are a ton of teams, especially the contenders, could have probably given up a lot of farm.
They would have probably gave up the farm system for half a season of Ohtani.
But rightly so. I mean, the guy right now is if not the number 1 player in baseball, is the number 2. I know people will argue about Aaron Judge.
Not an argument.
Well, you're wearing a Yankees jersey, so I'm speaking from an outside base. Okay, I'm keeping it fair. I'm a Mets fan. I struggle to watch certain arguments like that take place. When it comes to the top 2 players in baseball, there's no argument. It's Judge and Ohtani. Those are the 2 best players in baseball. Whatever way you want to order it. Oh, well, Judge isn't a pitcher. Oh, well, Ohtani's stats aren't as high in the hitting category. However you want to argue it. Those are the top 2 players in baseball.
Ohtani is the modern day Babe Ruth.
Well, exactly. But my thing is, there would have been a lot of contenders from last year or from that year when he signed with the Dodgers. The season prior, you probably could have had a lot of teams that were contending for a World Series title that would reach out and say, what would you take for Shohei Ohtani? What would you take for Shohei Ohtani? They would be begging for it.
You want to know what the Angels GM said? We're not selling him. We're not trading him because he sells tickets. But you have to think, right?
If you're stupid, but
if you're the Angels, you have to realize that you didn't give Ohtani. You had Ohtani and Trout at the same time. Arguably, at the time, 2 of the best players in baseball.
That may be the best duo in baseball if they would have stayed together. Even though Trout stays healthy.
If Trout and Ohtani stayed healthy and played together, that could have been that probably is the deadliest 1-2 punch of the history league. But what I'm saying, right, is you didn't give Trout a window to get a ring. Trout only has 1 or 2 playoff games in his career. Andy Pettitte has more hits in the playoffs than Mike Trout does, which I believe is insane to say.
If that stat is true,
it is. Look it up right now.
You go ahead and look it up because I'm going to also start talking about something else a little bit related
but
to.
But what I'm saying is you didn't give Trout a window.
No.
You didn't give him and Ohtani a window. Why would Ohtani say, "Hey, I'm going to stay in Los Angeles"? Trout is loyal to LA. I give Trout props for doing. He could have left. I heard teams were willing to offer him $400 million. I heard that the Yankees were or like the Mets were going to give him like 425. He signed for $300 million, some 325 with the Angels.
I also would not be surprised if he is a piece that is moved this year at some point, though, too.
Yeah, but
I don't know to who.
I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised that happens, but he's not what he used to be.
Well, no, but you know what? There are a lot of teams right now that would definitely see him, and I definitely see him as an upgrade over some of the other players they may have on their team. Steve Cohen, please call the Angels and see if you can get him. Just add another bat because we're going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, Brian Cashman, pick up the phone. Please.
Well, either one, because both teams have been struggling over the past couple of weeks. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the New York Mets and Yankees. Is it time to panic about either team? So first, we're going to start with the Mets, which is going to pain my heart as a Mets fan. I know, obviously, we'll let you talk on the Yankees.
Andy Pettitte has more postseason hits than Mike Trout. Andy Pettitte has recorded 27 hits in his career during the regular season play, and he has one hit in the regular season, while a pitcher is also based during the games, particularly Houston Astros. Pettitte, I believe, has 3 postseason hits, and Trout only has 1.
Wow, that's a crazy stat. But maybe he is moved to either one of these teams. Like I said, is it time to panic? Is it? So let's talk about the Mets first. So the Mets are 4-6 in their last 10 games. They've lost 6 straight, being swept in back-to-back series against Tampa and against Atlanta. Now, the big issue is not just the losses, it's the injuries. So the injuries for the Mets continue to pile up. They placed Max Kranick, Tyler McGill, and Kodai Senga on the 15-day IL. You have Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty both on the 10-day IL. And then earlier in the season, obviously this isn't the same as more recent, but you lose AJ Minter and Danny Young for the entire year. And you're still waiting on Montes, Minaya, and Brooks Raley all to come back. And I don't know how much you followed some of the rehab assignments that they've gone through, but Montes has been god-awful. God-awful. Oh, my goodness. If they call this man up with the ERA he's got in the minors and he pitches in the major league level, we may let up 15 runs in a single game. And it's starting to get a little bit scary because even though Soto is starting to hit the ball a little bit better than he was earlier in the season, now you're looking at other guys like Alonso start to cool off a little bit. Lindor cooling off a little bit. You're not getting the same power and production. You already lost Vientos for a decent amount. They still don't have Winker. They still don't have Jose Siri. Brett Beatty is still out. Marte's actually been surprisingly very good. Acuna, if you look at their other prospects, Acuna, Alvarez, and Mauricio have been almost close to abysmal. People are, I see a lot of Met fans online complaining, saying that Alvarez needs to be sent down to AAA to get his mind right. I would not be surprised if that's a move they make at some point, but I think it is a little bit time to panic. Not crazy. They still are, technically ahead by, I believe, a half a game over the Phillies. They're going to start getting some guys back, but it could be a little panic-related time for the Mets. Now, the Yankees. I know you're going to want to talk a little bit about the Yankees, being that you're the Yankees fan. They finally broke their 6-game losing streak, beating the Los Angeles Angels 7-3. But they are, I believe they said, what are they, 4-6 in their last 10 games? Now they're 5-5. So they beat the Angels. But the big issue that I wanted to talk about is the fact that they got shut out for 29 consecutive innings. 29.
Speechless.
That's, as a Mets fan on the outside, welcome to my world. But with the Yankees fans, you got, like we said before.
Well, think about it this way, right? It would have been.
It probably could have been 40.
No, it would have been 38 innings if it wasn't for Judge.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Another theme that
Crochet,
a lot of people.
Crochet had 100 and something pitches in the 9th inning, and he was still throwing 100 miles an hour.
Well, Crochet is also one of the big acquisitions the Red Sox made, which that's another thing. I'll go back very quickly. The Red Sox made so many offseason additions and somehow are still struggling. But back to the whole Yankees point. If it was not for Judge, I've heard a lot of fans say this, especially my job.
We would be last place in the division.
Well, I wouldn't go there. I don't think you'd be last place in the division because the Orioles right now are in some sort of funk. I don't know what the hell's going on.
We are one Judge injury, knock on wood, away from being out of playoff contention.
Well, yeah, that's a big issue. I've noticed that when Judge does not hit, the Yankees struggle to win games, and especially with names like Goldschmidt, Bellinger.
Whoa.
I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying they have some big names.
I am going to say one thing. Goldschmidt is batting above 300.
Oh, I know. Goldschmidt has been on a tear. I'm not even really ripping into him. What I'm saying is you have some big names, so you would figure even if one guy's struggling a little bit.
Yeah, the big names,
they're gonna
right?
win.
Big names. Goldschmidt, Bellinger, Chisholm,
Goldschmidt's been okay. Bellinger's been all right. The big one.
Chisholm has been bad. Volpe's been bad.
Thank you. Volpe, I'm going to say this. I'm going to look into the camera and say this. Volpe, what are you doing?
Give me 1 second. One thing I will say is there was one player that was really starting to come around, and he might have been one of the worst slides I've ever seen. I'm not like trying to say this is a bad thing, but Oswaldo Cabrera when he slid into home.
Yeah, that was a turning point.
That was like he was starting to figure things out. I love the guy. I'm rooting for him. But
how long is he out for?
Is he out for
the whole year?
He broke his ankle.
So he's
fractured something.
Yeah, I know he's out for significant time. But again, I hate to interrupt you. I'll look at the camera again. Anthony Volpe, where are you? You need to start showing up if you expect the Yankees to win games.
What are you doing? Literally. You've had several errors within the past week. I believe it's either 3 or 4 errors in the last week, which both led to runs nonetheless. In the Boston game, you threw the ball over. I believe it was Rice.
Oh yeah, it was at first. He threw the ball over
Rice's head at first base, and that led to Boston scoring and winning. And the Yankees only lost by 1 run that game. So that was a very controversial moment in that game as well. Actually, I take back what I said earlier about the Yankees being shut out for longer than that because that game we were talking about now is after the Crochet Masterclass game.
Yes, but anyway, regardless, Volpe was supposed to be obviously very hard shoes to fill.
Hold on. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you call a kid up to the Yankees, I'm saying this now. A lot of players that you think go to the Yankees, like superstars that go to the Yankees, or just a lot of players in general, they fail because they can't handle the pressure that comes with playing for the Yankees. A great example for this, right, is Joey Gallo.
Oh, good Lord.
Hold on. Joey
Good
Gallo,
Lord.
the year the Yankees traded for him.
Oh, no.
The year the Yankees traded for Joey Gallo, he was an all-star. He was phenomenal. He went to the Yankees, and he basically just
disappeared.
After he went to the Yankees, his career fell off the rails.
Now he's supposedly, I'm seeing videos of him on Instagram. He's training to be a pitcher now. So I don't know what happened there. That was a massive fail on their part. But that being said, I think the big issue with, like you said, with the pressure, Anthony Volpe's supposed to be your on-base guy. He's supposed to get you some stolen bases. He's supposed to be a terror on the base path. He's supposed to be a good fielder. And he just looks like he's not in the right mental capacity at this point. And I don't know what's going on, but it needs to be figured out.
Get that man some chicken parm if you know you know.
Yeah, because he's Italian. Shout out to the Scarlatta twins for that.
No, it's not. It's not why I said that. His rookie year, he was struggling. He was struggling tremendously his rookie year. And apparently he didn't get sent down to AAA, but he went out to dinner with Austin Wells, who's his best friend
big
from
food account guy now too.
Yeah. Who he went out to dinner with Austin Wells and he had a chicken parm. He went out to dinner, got a chicken. Once he came back from that dinner, he went on like a 20-game tear where he had like a hit. he played tremendously for the next like 20 or 30 games.
Well, then that means
Get this man a chicken parm.
Well, it's also, but again, that probably has a lot to do with it, but it's also because he's Italian, so he loves his chicken parm.
Italian, yes.
Anyway, now off the baseball talk, we're going to go a little bit into the NFL before we close out the show for the day, because there's two big things that we want to talk about, and then also we can kind of get into some projections. I know it's going to be way too early to do playoff seeds, but we'll talk a little bit about the Giants and Jets as well at some point too. But the two big signings that happened in the offseason most recently, we're going to start with the most recent one, which was Jair Alexander signing a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, well, is this the year the Ravens finally win the Super Bowl? Oh, my goodness. I don't think so.
Here's why. You have Jair Alexander, who is an all-pro cornerback, former all-pro cornerback, I should say. But if you look at the last 3 or so years, I believe he's only played 7 games?
Well, I'll go into that right now because like I said, I did a lot of research this time around.
Yeah, no, I know.
So,
but what I'm saying is he can't stay healthy. If Jair Alexander can stay healthy, the Ravens secondary is going to be the best in the league.
Absolutely. And here I'll go into it right now. So Alexander's 28 years old. He's coming off of what I'd say is a down year for him. He only played in 7 games last season in Green Bay. However, in those 7 games, he was a top 25 ranked corner, according to PFF, with a 75.2 overall grade. He was 16th in coverage with a 78.3 grade. His run defense was where he kind of struggled. He was 147th with a 57.8 grade, according to PFF. Then you also look at some other stats. 15 solo tackles, 128th out of all corners. He had 2 interceptions, top 15. And then he also only allowed 14 receptions in those 7 games, so 2 a game. His passer rating allowed was a little bit what he fell off on. He was 156 with a 79.9 passer rating allowed. He was 81st in pass breakups with 3, but he was 10th in yards per reception allowed with 16.2 yards. But the thing you just talked about is if he can stay healthy, the room that they have for their defensive back room. I pulled up their entire they have a room of him with Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, Kyle Hamilton, and the newly drafted Malachi Starks. That
disgusting.
room
Absolutely
is
disgusting.
insane. Now, people
on paper, best CB room, DB room in the league.
Absolutely. And their pass rush wasn't bad last year either, but this secondary that they have is nuts. So people are starting to say, is this the year the Ravens win in the AFC and find their way to a Super Bowl?
No.
Personally, I agree. I still believe that the AFC runs through 2 teams, Kansas City and Buffalo. Those are the 2 teams.
I agree. I mean, you have on offense, now we're going to switch to the offensive side, arguably best backfield in the league. With Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, absolutely insane.
Nuts.
But if you look at it this way, right, offensive line is good, solid, but you have a declining Mark Andrews due to age.
Yep.
You have
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins, who's washed up. He's not washed up.
He's not.
He played in Tennessee, but
he also played in Kansas City and did
City.
decent. But he's also got one of the best quarterbacks.
He dropped a wide open pass in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, it wasn't as bad as Mark Andrews dropping the playoffs.
I feel it might be.
No. That was a touchdown and it could have changed the game immediately. But me and you are both on the same page. I think Kansas City and Buffalo still have the edge. Kansas City's got a lot of good receivers coming back. Rashee Rice will be back and healthy to start the year. Hollywood Brown is still over there. Travis Kelce, a little bit more towards the end of his career, but we've seen with Andy Reid and Mahomes that they could use pretty much any tight end between Noah Gray or Justin Watson. They're going to find ways to score touchdowns. They still have a good running back room.
So now we're going to get on the topic of one more major signing recently, which is Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers.
Correct, yep.
I don't dislike the signing for the Steelers, but I don't love it. Well, Aaron Rodgers is 40.
I believe he should be 39, if I'm not mistaken.
39 or 40 years old. He didn't have a great year last year. Granted, he played for the Jets, which we're going to talk about them in 1 minute. I'm just going to quickly talk about this.
Yeah.
You have the Steelers who have a great defense. They have TJ Watt and they have Cameron Hayward. But on offense, you have they made the playoffs last year with Russell Wilson. And for Aaron Rodgers to come into that offense, with them arguably having the best 1-2 wide receiver punch and then getting rid of George Pickens, sending him to Dallas. I don't like that move at all.
Well, I don't
hate it.
either.
I get George Pickens has to get paid. I get he's not really all that, but he hasn't really had a competent quarterback to prove himself.
Well, I also think the big issue of why they moved him off too was his attitude problem.
Yeah.
And it's no disrespect to him. He's a very interesting character. When it comes to on the field stuff, the guy is a tremendous talent. He makes some unbelievable catches. But I think the big problem with him, like we said, was the amount of money he's going to be asking for and his attitude. Now, that being said, in regards to that, they lost him, right? They lost Pickens.
They lost Pickens.
They lost Najee Harris to the Chargers.
Exactly.
But then they drafted an a defensive lineman with their first pick. They took Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa, in the 3rd, and then added Will Howard in the 6th. So I don't know if they want to develop Will Howard sitting behind Rodgers. I'm not too sure.
Speaking of taking a rookie quarterback, developing under another starter, we can pivot to the Giants right now, because that's what the Giants did. The Giants traded back up late in the first round to pick 25, I believe, or 24. I think the Rams had 25.
No, the Rams had 26, and they
So it was
traded that away
25.
to Atlanta.
The Giants drafted Jackson Dart after taking Abdul Carter with pick number 3. I believe this offseason for the Giants has been really, really good. It's flown under the radar. They added great pieces to their defense, Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, and they made their offense better.
Well, it's also their pass rush between Kayvon Thibodeau,
Thibodeau, Brian
Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Abdul Carter. I was seeing clips of them during OTAs, and if that pass rush is anything like from what we've seen, the Giants may see an improvement in their record.
As a Giants fan, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely. I would be too. Now, I still had my projections here for their season. I don't really know how I feel they're going to do. I feel like their schedule is a little bit difficult. I did have them going 5-12.
That might be generous. The Giants, I don't understand this at all. They had one of the worst records in the league last year,
And they have the hardest schedule.
yeah,
They have the hardest schedule in the NFL.
no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, I also said the same thing with the Jets too, because I don't remember what the Jets' final record was last year. Was it 6-11?
I have no
So
clue.
I had them going 7-10, which we could talk about a little bit more next time as well too. But yeah, I was looking at the playoff projections, which I think we could touch on a small bit, very quick. You know, I still think the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and Texans win their respective divisions. You know, you have the Broncos, who are going to be a much better team this year. I think that they move up a little bit. I still think the Chargers are going to be a little bit competitive as well, too. Herbert may take another step up. They focused a lot on getting some receivers, adding to their offense. And the Bengals, I think, may squeak in. I know their defense has been horrible. I just don't see Joe Burrow losing a ton of games.
It all depends on how Joe Burrow plays the first 5 games of the season.
I was just about to say, if the Bengals come out hot to start the season, I would not be surprised to see them make it.
Shooing. If the Bengals could play great the first 5 games of the season, shooing.
And then in the NFC, I think it's fair that the top 2 teams I'm going to get some flack for this. I'm sorry. Eagles number 1, but my boys, the LA Rams, I think are the number 2 seed.
The Rams
with Devontae Adams and their defense and Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, that team is primed. They gave the Eagles the best run.
So I think the Rams take their division. Eagles take their division.
I think the Lions still find a way to win their division. I know their division's a little tougher, but they still have a lot of talent. And then I had the Falcons winning their division.
Nope.
A lot of people disagree. Penix did not have a full season. Their defense is still good.
I have the Bucks winning their division.
That's their best competitor.
Only because the Bucks may have the best receiving core in the entire league.
They are getting a little bit older, but you are right. You are right.
They added an amazing piece. They have
Egbuka.
They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and they add Emeka Egbuka, which
he's nasty.
If he can get mentored by Mike Evans, he's going to have a great career in the NFL.
Well, the last thing I have too is my 3 playoff wild card seeds. Little out there. I'd say the Packers, which is pretty understandable.
Minnesota.
The Washington Commanders.
Oh, definitely.
And last, a lot of people are going to be very skeptical, the Seattle Seahawks. I think the Seattle Seahawks have a fairly easy schedule. They do have to play a couple pretty dumpy teams. That being said, I think that their offense did get a tad bit better with the consistency. Darnold, if he plays any bit like he did last year with Minnesota, is a step up. They added Cooper Kupp. They still have a fairly good offense, and their defense definitely is something to worry about
one thing
for other teams.
One thing I'm going to add real quick before we just wrap this up real quick is I wouldn't count out Minnesota at all.
I wouldn't either.
It's just last year, J.J. McCarthy was hurt.
That's true.
And they signed Sam Darnold, and we're all sitting there like, Minnesota's not going to do anything. Sam Darnold, not good. But
it was the system.
It was the system.
Kevin O'Connell at the helm. He knows what he's doing.
That's why I think that Minnesota could squeak in over Seattle, because Seattle might not have the right system for Sam Darnold.
The only reason why I say that, just again before we wrap it up, is because they have a tougher division.
Because we've never seen that.
The Bears have gotten better. The Vikings are good.
The Bears could also squeak in.
The Bears could. The Packers are good. The Lions are good. That's a very tough division. They have to play half their games against that division.
I agree. So, but another thing I'm saying is we've never seen J.J. McCarthy play.
That's true, and he could surprise, but I just feel with the schedules and the way it's set up right now is the Seahawks do have a little bit easier of a way to get there than Minnesota does. Minnesota could easily do it. I just want to see how it plays out with the schedules.
With all that being said, I do want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening to the first episode of the Straight Outta Stratford podcast. Once again, I am one of the hosts, Julian, and this is my co-host, Zach, over here.
Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you guys for all checking in. We are going to definitely be shooting a lot more episodes. We're going to be talking a lot about many different things. We'll probably branch out a little bit off of sports too at some point. We will talk a lot of sports though, because obviously we are two big sports guys.
That is our wheelhouse.
That's our forte. That's our wheelhouse. So we will talk about some other stuff. But if you're loving all the sports content, follow us on all of our social media platforms that we have. We just launched all of them up. So we are all ready to contact with people. And at some point, we'll have a call-in line so you guys can call us, have, some topics ready. If you guys want to have a little debate with us and talk some certain things, we'll be more than happy to do that. But that being said, thank you again for checking in to the Straight Outta Stratford podcast with Zach and Julian. With us until next time, everybody have a good week. Contact with people. And at some point, we'll have a call. Thank you again for checking in to the Straight